you thought, why would a sleep workshop be good for me?
Well,
There's no wrong answer. I just want to make sure I answer it.
Well, it's a very generic statement, but I just would like to learn how to sleep again because it's been a long time and it's very erratic. I have a hard time falling asleep.
Okay.
And so it's
Falling
just
asleep
generic.
and staying asleep, or specifically falling asleep?
Good point. It's both.
Okay.
But the falling asleep is the hardest.
Okay. I promise I'll address these. I just want to see all your questions beforehand, and that's a huge one. Is like, like I want to sleep, but if my body's not doing it, how do I actually get there, and how do I stay that way?
And then I do bad things to distract myself, and that keeps me awake. So I do know what you're going to tell me, but it's good for you to tell me because I listen to you. I don't listen to me. I need an authority.
First of all, we're our own worst advocates, and we'll talk ourselves out of doing things that we know are right.
Exactly.
So sometimes. And like even some of the stuff I'm going to say today, you're going to be like, yeah, I already knew that. But actually, I have studied sleep so much and I am still learning. I'm just scratching the surface.
Okay.
But I'm finding there's so much new, it's brand new, 30 to 40 years of information and research that hasn't ever been around. And so you might still learn something too. Any other thoughts? Why today?
Well, I have the worst habit of I'll sleep for an hour and a half and wake up and say, and then I start thinking, oh my God, I gotta get this done, and oh, what about this? And oh geez.
So your mind races?
Yes.
Do you like start planning out your next day?
Yeah, and then I start thinking of things that, have no bearing on the next week or two or even a couple
or in this
months.
lifetime, maybe next lifetime?
Totally
Okay.
in this lifetime. Do
you feel like it's any anxiety associated with it?
It can be sometimes.
Okay. Again, I'm not trying to call you out, but to see what those questions are.
And it's interesting that it's different for us.
It is
I don't
different.
have that. That sounds hard.
Lucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so empathetic. I always appreciate that about you, Sherry. Because you're always so empathetic to that sounds really hard. It does sound really hard. Well, I'm so glad that you're all here. Does anyone else want to contribute? Like, this is what I want to learn today, or this is what's boggling my mind.
I quit drinking caffeine by noon, and it's like, I don't drink any alcohol because I just had knee surgery, but it's like, I take like 10 milligrams of melatonin, I take a Tylenol PM, and I crash for like 5 hours, and then at like 4 or 5 in the morning, I can't get back to sleep. I mean, I'll go sleep in bed, I'll go sit in the living room and not turn any lights on, not look at my phone, but it's like,
you're just up.
I'm awake.
Okay.
And I don't know, maybe it's part of surgery because I sit around more, and so I'm not tired enough. But it's like, I feel like, it's like, so then about 5 o'clock, you're like falling asleep watching TV and
5 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it seem like a new habit for you? Like this didn't happen before?
I used to be able to sleep I'd wake up about 3 to go to the bathroom, but I could usually get about 6.5 hours. But lately it's about 5. And maybe it's more, maybe it's my knee too is bothering and,
Yeah. I mean, pain definitely changes the way our body feels about everything, right?
Right, and I wake up more when I roll around because it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that wasn't a good way.
The red flag goes off, the engine light.
It's like, oh, I wasn't going to turn that way, yeah.
That's really hard. Do you nap during the day, if you don't mind me asking?
No.
Okay. And then do you feel like, okay, I gave up caffeine, I'm not drinking. Do you feel like these are things that you're like, I'm trying all the things? Or am I just putting words in your head?
Oh, I quit drinking caffeine like in the afternoon many years ago. It seemed like after about age 55, 60, the caffeine hit me a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, coffee isn't as bad as if I have a Diet Coke. I don't, maybe it's the carbonation or something, but I mean, sometimes at night I'll have like, an herbal tea or something if I want something hot because I get cold because I'm tired.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm tired of like taking I don't want to take any more melatonin and everything. I feel like it makes me crash. I mean, I go to sleep
hard
pretty fast.
Okay.
It's just that
quick to fall asleep, but once you wake up, you're up.
Yeah, and then I like wake up with a headache because I'm sure I just I mean, because I hardly move. I mean, I pretty much all
Wow.
lay down and then all of a sudden, but then when I do wake up, I'm like,
Yeah. Different goals. If we could combine all of them, we'd all be great
I
sleepers.
know. But listening to you made me think of something, which is, does our body's need for sleep change over time? Because most of my life, I got it. 9 hours of sleep. I'm thinking, wow, I'm so jealous of myself. I got 9 hours of sleep every night. I had multiple dreams. I loved my dreams. I got double feature color movie. I'd be eating popcorn in my mind.
I'm pregnant, so I'm all about the
Just-
dreams right now.
Oh yeah, but I just could sleep, and I
Yeah.
slept 9 hours. Then I woke up and it was fine. And at some point, I'm not sure exactly when, but it all kind of went. So is it partly
Yeah, the short
Over
answer
time?
is yes. Over
'Cause I
time,
didn't
it
know
does
that.
change.
okay?
But it's usually post-menopause that it does change.
Okay, I didn't know
And it
that.
is some bad habits that we form that get us to that
Okay,
phase of
Okay.
change. So again, we'll answer
but
that
I'm
too.
probably not going to go back to 9 hours of solid sleep.
Well, we always gotta try.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the goal.
Makes sense. Anyway, that's interesting. I did not realize that. It makes sense though when
Yeah.
you say it.
Yeah.
Sure.
We have one more person coming in right now,
Mhm.
and I told her she could come late, so that's my fault, but I apologize. So thank you for all waiting.
I made
Anything
it.
else? Nicole, do you want to say, you don't have to, but do you want to say anything at all? Just more informational, just something you want to work on, something for someone you know that really sparked your
No,
idea of being here?
this would be for me and just kind of wanting to know what information you have.
Yeah.
I'm starting my sleep journey. I work a 24-hour
Tina, make
shift,
yourself at
so
home.
Oh, wow.
it's not really gonna work for me to be consistent because I never know when a call's gonna come in, and
Yeah.
I come to grips with that, and I don't do the caffeine afternoon type
Yeah.
deal, so I'm already doing things that should help me, but I can sleep 2 hours, I can sleep 12 hours, I do not feel like I slept. So, I don't know.
You don't feel refreshed after you sleep.
No, I don't feel recharged whatsoever.
So Tina, I'm putting you on the spot, but we haven't really started yet, but we're asking like, what would you like to learn tonight? Anything in particular? And it's okay if you don't have an answer.
Just, I mean, best practices, right? Like, I am a person who tries to learn things about what's going on in my
Yeah.
body and my brain, and
Yeah.
you know, I know that I should avoid screen time and have a routine at night, and like maybe do
sounds
some
so
stretching,
simple.
and
Yeah.
right.
Oh yeah,
Like
those things.
So I do have a routine, like I make sure I floss every night, and
Mhm.
you know, like wash my face, and you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, I still sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
I can't get back to sleep.
Yeah.
Like what's going on? You know, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Absolutely.
That makes me think of one other question, which is I think I assume I know the answer, but the significance, how important sleep is to our bodies.
That's what we'll really talk about the most
Okay,
today.
that's that because that
And
I'd
just
like
to
hear
warn you
about
all,
that.
it feels depressing at first because none of us are perfect sleepers all of the time, and life doesn't allow for that. But as much as I will depress you, I'll bring you back up. So as I'm reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this thing at home, and it's just like this little terrorist that just decides whenever I wake up or go to sleep, and they're called children. So we can't always sleep the same way that we want to. The only person, Joan, did you have anything to say? And don't feel like you have to.
Just information mostly, and both my sister and I, and actually my mom too, we reach a certain age and then it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, we wake up and then we're up, we
Yeah.
can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And then it'll last for maybe 6 weeks, and then you'll go back to normal sleep, and then I'll come back again and just.
Are you up too?
Yeah.
It's hard, it really is. So my true opening story was a moment of realization when I was in college, and this is grad school, so it's a little more intense than I was probably ready for, just to put it lightly. In the sense that, of course, it's very demanding, but this was finals time. So our finals in the first year were a lot more intense than they were in the other years, and I think it's probably the school's way of weaning us out, because school felt a lot harder than it did in the beginning than it did towards the end. Has anyone had that experience in general? Like when you start something new, it's always harder until you get a routine of it, like starting a new job? grad school is very much that way. So I'm in my second trimester of 10, and the second trimester is really the process where people, I wouldn't say make it or break it, but they decide like, do I really want to do this or not? So our finals looked crazy. I had 17 finals in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
It sounds worse than it was, maybe, or maybe I'm just not remembering clearly. But I do know I was in a really bad habit of cramming, and I was a good memorizer, if that makes sense. So I think I've slowly lost that skill over time, or I've learned better. I'm not sure. My story was that I went and I got up, and I think it was final number 6 or final number 7. It's at 8 a.m., which is way too early for a college student. So anyway, I get to school at 7:30. I take the final. The night before, I pulled an all-nighter. I'm like, I'm going to cram whatever I can in this. I probably studied productively for 6 or 7 hours of the night, not the whole 10 that I was awake for, but I crammed. And I wrote down everything I could on the exam, and I did okay. I passed. I didn't excel in the exam, but I completed it. Went home exhausted. My next one was at 3 o'clock that day, so I was like, I got a lot of time. I'm ready for that one. I'm going to go to sleep. And I took this 2.5, 3 hour nap, I don't even know, and I woke up in a total state of panic, totally delusional. I went back to the school. I cried to my professor and begged her to let me take the exam that I'd missed this morning. And she was like, Bria, you were here and you're done and you've already gotten your score. And I didn't even remember it.
Wow.
I was so delusional.
Wow.
And I know that sounds crazy, and please don't feel bad for me. I did it to myself. Pulling an all-nighter was not a great idea. But I'm learning about this talk, and that's the first thing I thought of, like, oh my gosh, my brain totally shut off. And now I'm still dreaming as I'm awake and delusional, and I can't understand time, reason, or the sense of things around me because I was so sleep deprived from one night. And I'm sure you've all pulled an all-nighter for some reason or way, shape, and form, but I'm sure it's not the best memory you've ever had. And so at that point in time, I started, let's say if I got through finals and I let a year pass, got through as much school as I could, but then I started to say, okay, sleep is really having an effect on my schoolwork. I need to learn something about that. And that's when I started my sleep journey of learning things about, like you say, a sleep journey. It's a perfect way to say it. But what we found out through time is that it doesn't make sense with evolution why we sleep. And what I mean by that is, as we evolve as humans, or any organism at all, we should have left sleep behind, because in a survival mode, there's no benefit. Does that make sense? We can't hunt, we can't protect our tribe, right? I'm thinking in a survivalist of evolution. We can't defend ourselves. Our voluntary movement muscles that our brain tells us what to do shut off during REM sleep. So thankfully, otherwise we'd walk and talk and go about our day asleep, right? It's a problem to sleepwalk. So thankfully, our body does that for us. So many things happen during our sleep that are beneficial to our body, but not beneficial to our survival. So if it wasn't essential, and if it were a choice, it wouldn't exist. But every single living organism sleeps in one way, shape, or form. Now, we might sleep differently than, like, this is a random fact that doesn't even matter, but I think it's so interesting, is aquatic animals only sleep with half their brain at a time. Did you know that? Well, I just thought it was fascinating because they would lose all their aquatic skills and sink, or the ones that need the mammals that come up for air would not know to do that because their brain would be completely asleep. But our brains are not designed that way. And the crazy thing is there's so much wiring that comes into the brain being designed that way that we don't get that. But that's okay that we don't sleep with just one side of our brain at a time. Either way, it is not a choice. It's not a lifestyle. It is essential, and it really makes up our well-being as a whole. Without sleep, we cannot function. And there's study after study of that happening, of people staying awake by day 3. They are what I was. They are delusional. They can't make sense of things. And think of how bad Maggie and I always joke all the time that our cruel husbands just tell us to go to sleep if we're really crabby, and then we go to sleep and we're all better. They're not cruel husbands, but sometimes you don't want to hear that, right? But the truth is that our brain is designed to sleep for a reason, and that's really what we dig into today. So right now, any other questions? No? Okay. Jill set this up for me. Let's see if I can make it work. Did it work?
Yeah.
So we always look for signs like, do I know if I need to sleep better? And some of them you already mentioned in your own personal lives of things that you've noticed, and I don't need to read through the list. But a lot of the things we notice as we try to fall asleep or get back to sleep, but some of them are the same things that we experience during the day. Like, I just can't lose weight. I really can't give up my caffeine. My blood work doesn't look that great. My blood pressure is increasing. These are symptoms of, hey, my body's not sleeping as well. Sometimes we pinpoint them to symptoms of other things, but it almost always starts with sleep. Okay? Any of these that anyone wants to talk about in the moment, we are going to go through them during the talk, but if one is standing out to you, please let me know. I'm just going to hold my phone. I hope you don't mind. So the real question is, why do we sleep? And a lot of that we talked about with the evolutionary past of yes, our body knows that it needs to sleep, but the crazy benefits that happen when we sleep is what really fascinates me. And first and foremost, it builds your immunity. And it's one of the few things that do. It's when all of our immune cells, our B lymphocytes, if you want to be technical, and some of you know these terms, that fight off everything during the day and build our immunity, actually replenish at night, and it's the only time they do that. It also naturally lowers our blood sugar. There's a long list here, but in the sense of it lowers our blood sugar, it builds our immunity, I already said that. It lowers our blood pressure. It decreases our core temperature overall, so that helps us fight infection throughout the day. It's also when all of our hormones regulate. So the ones that are mostly affected, and women have this too, is testosterone. We need it to function. Men have more of it, and they talk about it all the time, and they're much in this. But women have it too. It's a big part of our reproductive system. And estrogen is ginormously affected by our sleep. And all these things balance throughout the night. But I think the part that's the coolest is what we learned recently, and by we, I mean I learned it weeks ago, but the scientists learned it in 2019, this is about a 19-second video. I just took a screenshot of it so you can see that wherever there's red here, and some of this is like orange and yellow, right? Yeah, my colorblindness. Orange and yellow, you might be able to see a little bit of the blue here, but if you've ever seen like an echo done, I know some of you, this is your area of expertise, but this is really blood flow, and in this case, cerebrospinal fluid. Have you all heard of that? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So if you have questions about that, let me know. We've always known for years and years and years, way before any of our time, that the body can detoxify. But we've never truly known with science that our brain can too. So at night, it does 70% of the detoxification by all this cerebrospinal fluid literally flowing through the brain while we're sleeping and cleaning out the gunk. It's so cool. So if you want the video, you can see it, but it just looks like red flashing all on and off. And this is the title of it, bless you. It's all about the cerebrospinal fluid flowing through a relaxed brain. And our brain works the hardest at night. I feel like all day long it works, but at night it does the most efficient work that it can. There's an example of, and I quote a lot of studies here, and they do not come from me. They come from someone that I follow. His name is Matthew Walker. I don't know if you've heard of him or I've talked about him a lot, but he is a neuroscientist that has completely dedicated his life to sleep studies, or to sleep in general. So his past is he grew up in Britain, graduated from London, taught at Harvard, and now he has his own sleep center in not like the kind that you and I are thinking of, okay, let's go test my sleep, but actual just rich science, usually funded by the NIH, directly linking sleep to all its purposes and then also all its effects. So most of what I'm quoting today is from him. If you're a podcast listener, you dive in and you're totally in. He's fascinating to listen to. He has a nice accent and makes it really easy. But a lot of what I'm quoting today is from him. And he did a study with his peers on how they watched mice learn a maze. You've all heard of studies like that, right? Mm-hmm. And here they're studying their brain waves when they're doing the maze and then when they're sleeping. And I can't quote him directly, but he does this perfect noise of the brain waves are like thump thump, 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 kind of like a heartbeat throughout the day during the maze. And at night, they're that at 20 times faster in REM sleep of processing that same information. Not only that, but when the mice woke up, they were 30% better at the maze. So a lot of times we tell ourselves, I just got to get through this information, I just got to get this done. But when we sleep, our brain actually processes all of the information and learns it better. There's a ton of studies that they link this to now athletes, because when athletes compete at a really high level, it's a marginal difference. You know, like I can barely run a mile right now. That's not the difference in two swimmers that are competing at an Olympic level. And it's almost always related in their scores that they have the same skills, but their sleep is directly affecting their performance. And it's very much like that. Our body reprocesses while we sleep. So I think that's fascinating. There's a whole list of things that can cause sleep issues, but number one is stress. And number two, which I found to be a big surprise, is that our psychosomatic, do you know what that means? Our brain thoughts of how our body responds to our brain thoughts, how we talk to ourselves, has so much influence on how we sleep. For example, kind of like the fear of the bedroom. I know I'm going to be up all night if I sleep in this room, or if I try to lay down, or if I don't just finish these things on my task list, I'm never going to get to sleep. Or the looking at the clock and saying, oh, only this much time has passed. And that psychosomatic relationship that we develop with sleep. Well, I haven't been sleeping well for a week, I'm never going to get back to it. So I'm just talking about the negative thoughts that we have associated with sleep, or habits that we formed around sleep, have a big effect on our stress and what that looks like. And I could list a lot of things. Pain is one of them that we've talked about. Pain is going to keep you up a lot differently than it would if you didn't have it. Positioning in the bed, there's all sorts of different aspects, but the highest ones are really the stress and that relationship that we have with sleep in general. So it's like the oil light in the car that dings at us over and over until we feel like addressing it. But know that these warning signs are important to listen to. So this is one of those things from Matthew Walker that I found. This is the part where it feels a little depressing. I promise I'll bring you back up. But that sleep has been so deeply studied now to the point in the last 30 years that when we look, you know, everyone knows what this is. A strand of DNA. Right? That makes sense? Yep. That when we study the difference of sleep, now I'm going to talk about the averages of sleep, and I'll just say right now on a vague relationship with how long we should be getting sleep, we'll talk about quality after we talk about quantity, is that we should get at least 7 hours of sleep per night. Anytime that we decrease to 6 hours, and this is studied after 1 week, that's when a lot of the problems start. So first and foremost is we notice a huge change in our immunity. For example, losing 1 hour of sleep, like let's say you get 7, by 1 hour I'm saying 6. So let's say we lose 1 hour of sleep per night for one night, our immunity for the next day is a 40% decrease. Huge. You ever notice that if you're not sleeping as well, you're more prone to get sick? Sometimes it feels like common sense, but the science really proves that. The next part is doing the study over 1 week is that 711 genes express differently. So we all have a genetic code that makes us exactly who we are, but not all of our genes are active all of the time. Have you ever heard of epigenetics? We talk about it sometimes at our other workshop. It means if your gene is turned on or off, if it's active or non-active. For example, you could do a huge gene screening and you could say, well, I have the gene for Parkinson's, but the gene epigenetic, the gene might not turn on or it might not express if I follow very habitual things in my life that won't make me prone to that gene expressing. You've heard that? Yep. I have alcoholism in my family, but unless I expose myself to those habits and that environment, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be an alcoholic. So these are very vague examples of gene expression, and that's what I'm talking about. So gene expression or epigenetics and these changes. So some change, half of them literally change by going up, and half of them change by going down. But I'll tell you, there's not a single benefit to either, even though it sounds like some are better, because the ones that are better are a huge increase in stress. And stress is directly linked now in science to the increase of likelihood of cardiovascular disease. A huge increase in chronic inflammation. This is not like I stubbed my toe or I twisted my ankle or I have a lot of stress right now. Acute inflammation. This is chronic inflammation over the time that the body does not get rid of on its own. And that's what that means there. And the last is tumor promoting. The three tumors that are directly linked, the three cancers, mostly to gene expression change based on sleep. Does that make sense? That was a long sentence. Is breast, bowel, and prostate. Those are the three that are directly linked to the point where they're starting to title the loss of that much sleep as a carcinogen. Crazy, right? The ones that go down is the immune function that we talked about. I know it feels depressing, guys. Stick with me.
It's actually really logical. How does cardiovascular disease manifest?
Manifests mostly through stress.
Okay.
The higher amount of stress that we have, the more irregular that our hormones are released,
Okay.
and the less likely that the body can auto-regulate them because of the loss of sleep.
Okay.
Most of that happens while we're sleeping, and if we're not sleeping enough, there's not enough time for the body to catch up.
Okay. So what happens in your body that you get cardiovascular disease?
Yes. It happens in many phases on many different ways, and there are different types of cardiovascular disease. And I'm not going to call anyone out, but if any nurses ever want to speak up in here, they can. That being said, a lot of the things that lead to chronic lack of sleep start within the arteries. And so the arteries build up plaque. It's called atherosclerosis, if you've heard of that.
That's
And
related
that
to sleep.
blockage, yes, it's directly related to sleep. There are other factors, but sleep is showing in studies to have the most influence on the body not being able to fight that off, and to, like we saw in the brain, we know what happens in the body. I haven't shown you any pictures of it because the body does detox, but even detoxing in the brain and getting rid of any plaque and any blockage, I'm going to say one broad term for all of it, is not happening if we do not have enough time for the body to clear it out. We already know that the liver and kidneys work really hard at night. We'll talk a lot about that when we talk about caffeine and alcohol towards the end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That was a long answer. I apologize.
Yeah. Perfect.
Any other questions on this part of it? Is it some new information? I think so too, even when I was learning it. There was one other thing I was going to say on this slide, and now it's just totally wiped from my brain, so I'll come back to it when I think of it. Good thing you guys don't know my order. I shouldn't joke like that, I apologize. So today I'm going to do, some of you have been to other workshops of ours. It's a lot of me talking. I really appreciate you tuning in because I want to hear what your concerns are and what you want to learn from today. But today I'm going to do this talk a little different than some of our other ones, because these are all the reasons I thought, hey, we need to have this workshop. These are the things that I hear every single day or every couple days, or I hear amongst family members or friends that are reasons not to sleep well, okay? Like we're talking about schedule, and I joke about it about my kids, but in your case, life does not allow for that. So we're gonna break down each one of these. You're gonna see this slide a lot, so we can go from there. The first one is the exercise. I know that you've all been told by every doctor or anyone in the medical field or even your best friend, hey, we need to work out. I want you to know so much can change by exercise to regulate your sleep. And like you were saying before we started, only 12 minutes, I can totally do that. 30 minutes, 5 days a week is the most ideal for exercise. But the second best thing is exercising, right?
Just doing it.
Just doing it. The higher we can get our heart rate and let it interval back down and rest, like people do interval training, or it's called high intense interval training. That's like for example, do 20 squats and then stop. Wait a little bit, do 20 squats and then stop. You get your heart rate up and you let it rest back down. It's not the only form of exercise, but it is the most productive form. And the best time to do it is in the morning. And the reason that's the best time is it kickstarts your brain into awake mode and it gets our body going. Now the craziest thing is, back to athletes, because I think we all want to be there. I don't have Joe to show you our athlete today. Maggie, you're a very good athlete too.
Well, thank you.
It's just Joe tells us he's not athletic and it hurts our hearts. I'm sorry to pick on Joe when he's not here. So 65% improvement in quality of sleep just by exercising 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. Work it into your own schedule. 12 minutes a day, also very, very effective.
So what if you already do more than that and it doesn't help?
It does help. If you
Oh, it'd be
didn't
worse.
do it, you
It would
would
be
see
worse.
such
Okay.
a change.
Okay, got it.
And so you can change up. So did everyone hear the question?
Yep.
Like, what if you're already doing it and I'm still not sleeping great? You can change your activity every once in a while, and having the variety might make a big difference.
Okay.
But essentially, it kickstarts your day, but it also makes us more fatigued at night, so we're more likely to fall asleep in the cycle that we're supposed to. So maybe a little more vigorous, or maybe a change in pace, and we can talk about it individually too.
Okay. Yeah, because fatigue doesn't seem to make any difference to me. I can be fatigued and not sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, but go
And
on
we'll
with
break
this.
down some other ideas and
Okay.
other kind of
Okay.
myths in our head and see if any of those relate to it too.
Okay.
So the craziest thing to me, which is just not the muscles, but if we are not getting enough sleep, yet we're still being really active, most of the weight that we will lose is from our muscle tissue, not from our adipose tissue, which is our fat cells. So unfair. So that's in the 4 to 6 hour range that happens of sleep a night. So by exercising, it's twofold, because no matter if we are not exercising per day, we're still moving our body and it will still go towards the muscle. Is get your body moving at any time of day. And you're doing great, Sherry. And then it's more likely that the body will appropriately lose weight in the right areas. Questions about that? We talk about this a lot, and this is the one point I was going to draw. Do you know where we put our markers?
Up on the shelf.
Thank you, Mickey. Woo! I'm dropping things. Okay, so we talk about this a lot here, but let's refresh. Is we have our nervous system talk today. And some of you might know this. Okay, and this is shorthand. So if you are a drawer, you can draw it. You might already know all this information, but just as a refresher. So I'm going to draw a spine here, and I'm not going to do a very good job of the side view of the spine. Okay, so we have the head, the neck, mid back, and low back. Can everyone see this? Okay, so when our brain talks to us, talks to the body, it sends a message down the central nervous system. It's in the center. And then out to the rest of the body, which is our peripheral nervous system, if you think like your peripheral vision. Okay, everyone's following me?
Yep.
I know you can't see it on the video, they'll be okay. This communication between the brain telling the body what to do and the body telling the brain what's happening all happens automatically. Thank goodness. You could not breathe and talk and think and do everything you needed to do if your body didn't do this for you. So this is called your autonomic nervous system. And everything we do in chiropractic relates to creating a lack of interference for the autonomic nervous system to function. Now to complicate it, the autonomic nervous system has 2 branches. Am I losing anybody? No. Okay. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Now you might have heard these before. Sympathetic, as nice as it sounds, is our fight or flight response. It's also turning on or activated more often when we have a busy schedule and our minds are running like crazy and we have 50 things to do and we're stressed about something. That is our sympathetic response, because it's our body's way of protecting itself. It's our run, okay? It'll also help you do crazy things that you hear the stories of, like people lifting a car or outrunning a bear. You never hear that, but you know what I'm saying. Crazy things happen when your sympathetic system is on fire. but most of the time it's running no matter what. It's how we function throughout the day. Our parasympathetic system, this is also a term you might have heard, it's our rest and digest. You've heard of this too? Really break it down into the two words. It's when our body rests and it's when our body digests. Both of these are directly linked simultaneously. They're always both functioning, but we tend to run in a society that's very high sympathetic, very low parasympathetic. The great news is every time you get adjusted, they balance out. On an extreme example, let's say someone with any sort of deficiencies or somewhere on the spectrum, their sympathetic system is working way up here and their parasympathetic system is hardly working. And of course, it's a range, but in general terms. And so that balance is so crucial to get the body to there. So what happens, does this surprise you, when we're not sleeping enough, is that our sympathetic system is working overtime and we talk ourselves out of doing certain things. So what we found, I say we, I promise it's not me, what I've learned from studies that have been done and what have been found in studies is that our parasympathetic system works the hardest at night. That's when we rest and replenish. But also anxiety is on the rise with the type of lifestyle that we have. And anxiety is directly reduced by sleep. This is a brilliant thing that our brain does for us, but when we go through a trauma, so to speak, and this could be any type of trauma, but if your brain feels like it's trauma, let's label it as trauma for today. Make sense? A traumatic experience for myself might be different than someone else, but so that's why I'm vaguely categorizing it. So if we have trauma throughout the day, our brain can only process what it comes in at a certain moment. When we sleep, the emotions are literally taken out of the trauma and our brain tries to categorize what happened and make sense of it. This is where this happens in our deepest stages of sleep. I'm going to go on a tangent for just a second. There's two main types of sleep. There's REM sleep. Have you heard of that? That's our dream state. And there's non-REM sleep. For a long time, they argued that one was more important than the other. And that's a myth, actually. They're just as equally important because they have very different jobs, all that need to happen when we sleep. But during our deep, deep non-REM sleep, non-rapid eye movement, that's what it means, the dreaming phase, in our deepest sleep, this is when our brain sorts out those things. So major reductions in anxiety and major reductions in response to traumas and PTSD, they find it on a lot of veterans in fields like police work or firefighters or anyone that's in a very frontline trauma state, that most of their rehab is involved with sleep. Really cool.
Yes.
I'm not calling anyone out today, but you can volunteer your own information.
So what happens in REM sleep?
REM sleep and so I would love to dive into this today, but we have so much information to cover that I'm not going to really go into detail into the differences of the sleep.
Okay.
And the reason is it's an hour by itself.
Okay.
But essentially one is REM sleep, that's your rapid eye movement. That's when we get most of our dream phase of sleep. Our non-rapid eye movement has it's broken down into 4 stages. So for a long time they argued that the first 2 stages, this is your light sleep. This is where you feel like you're in and out of sleep and you're not actually sure if you slept. You ever have that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I dozed off, I think, actually. Yeah. What day is that? That's our non-REM sleep. And then the deeper stages are when our brain does that most sorting. And like we talked about the mice and the maze, that deep, deep non-REM sleep is when they sorted out that process. So that was really vague. There's so many benefits in both, and they're both required. What tends to go first is REM sleep. Yeah. And so we're going to talk about that with alcohol and caffeine and bad sleeping habits, but that's
my dreams.
I know. So 2 points. You might still be having dreams that you don't remember. Right. Or that you're not getting enough REM sleep because you're not sleeping long enough. Right. So those are the very short answers of what we're talking about. Any questions on the nervous system part of it? Everyone's got it? You probably knew it already. I talk about it a lot. So the next one, and this is the longest conversation, is sleeping aids. And the reason why this is crucial is because so many people are on them. But I'm going to tell you something that really irritates me. is that as chiropractors, we have about 4 to 6 hours in 2 days. So we have a total of 10 to 12 hours studying sleep in school.
That's not enough.
That's not enough. Guess how much an MD has?
Yes.
1
Two.
to 1.5 hours in
Oh,
12 years of study.
Wow.
Now, I'm not knocking on MDs because I have a lot of friends that are MDs, but guess who you go to if you have sleeping problems?
Right.
Your chiropractor, not your friend who just got really obsessed with podcasts and learned a lot about sleep. And it's really hard to find our own information, not them, but we go to our doctor. And it's always a question that's asked in my experience. All right, how's your eating? How's your diet? How's your drinking? How's your tobacco use? How's your intimate life? Are you safe at home? How's your sleep?
Right.
To me, those are the list of questions that are asked. But the level at which we are prescribing sleeping aids is skyrocketing. The problem with that is that a sleeping aid, and I put aid as in any aid, now this is anything to help us get to sleep or stay to sleep. There is a time and a place for them, but it is very rare. The main problem with them is twofold. Number one is that they are overprescribed in the amount of time that they are used. I'm going to again call them sleeping aid for now because there's a lot of categories here, but the sleeping aids here that are prescribed that are listed, and I just listed the top ones. There are so many out there, like any medication. These top ones are prescribed for until you sleep better. They're highly addictive, and also they're meant for a 3 to 4 week program. I don't know many people that are on them for 3 to 4 weeks. Sometimes they're prescribed PRN, which is the classic definition of as needed, but they're highly addictive. So it becomes a problem because you slept well once. So now I'm going to take them again, and I'm going to take them again. And it's very, very hard to detox from them. The second problem is that they're sedatives. They are not actually to get you to sleep in the stages of sleep that we need, in the REM and the non-REM. But sedation is not the same thing as sleeping. This is where we don't talk about quantity of sleep, but quality of sleep. The quality of sleep cannot be there if you're in a sedative state. Is it still beneficial for you over not sleeping? Hands down. Absolutely, there's no argument there. But the quality of sleep is not there, and the benefits that we need from sleep can't come with it. So I know I'm generalizing. I'm going to tell you one crazy, scary story of a patient's friend of mine, so I haven't met them, on Ambien. A lot of these also are linked heavily to depression and anxiety. And the thought is, I don't know if there's enough research yet, but the thought is that because we're not getting enough of that non-REM deep sleep, because we're sedated, not sleeping at the same level, is that depression rates are skyrocketing because the body's not doing what it needs to do in that state. Does that make sense? So, although a lot of things may happen, sleepwalking is a huge one with a lot of these. This crazy story is that a male was on them. His depression skyrocketed as a symptom, as a side effect, as we would label it, to Ambien. And he didn't even know it, but he went in his garage, he started his car, and he was in the process of committing suicide. And praise the Lord, his wife found him. Now, he doesn't remember any of it. And of course, they immediately detoxed from Ambien. And it gives me chills every time I think of the story. And not every case is like that, but they are out there. They are really crazy. This is not related to sleep, but I know some people try smoking cessation with medication or patches. Very similar delusional-like effects and huge increase in depression and anxiety. And so we have to be really careful when it comes to medication. Again, there's a time and a place. I want you to take it very seriously if it's been recommended to you. And do your research. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but really fend for yourself. Is this the best option for me? Okay? Questions about the medications? I know it was kind of brief. The next options here, we have things like NyQuil and Tylenol PM. The big thing about these is they're typically acetaminophen, which is a form of Tylenol. So that's a pain reducer, it's an inflammation reducer, and NSAID. again, if I'm saying words you don't know, please tell me. We need inflammation to heal. So again, there's a time and a place for this, but most of the time our body produces inflammation in an acute version on purpose. Without it, it extremely slows our healing process.
That's new.
It also is an antihistamine, which, like Benadryl, is often used for sleeping, and again, it's sedation. So just informative on what you're taking. And again, there's a time and a place, and I'm not here to manage any of your medications, but know what you're taking. And the last two that I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on here, and then I promise it goes a lot faster with a lot more positivity, is CBD and THC. Now, you don't have to tell me if you're taking this, but I get asked a ton of questions on these. And I'm also not here to do anything to change your lifestyle. First of all, have fun, do what you do when you want to do it, but I really want you to know the facts and the science behind it. A lot of the things that we know about CBD really are similar to the studies that are done with alcohol. CBD is more of a new concept in terms of sleeping. Alcohol's been around for a long time. So alcohol is studied in a way deeper depth. And I'm going to talk about both of them right now because they are linked in how they're showing up in research. The thing about CBD is, first of all, is that it's not as controlled in the substance. Do you know the difference between CBD and THC?
No.
Okay, so one is an active form of marijuana, and so it's active. CBD is not. CBD is derivative from the plant, but doesn't essentially get you high, where THC would. Okay, I'm using vague terminology, but I think you guys know what I mean. But I'm putting them together because they have a direct relation of how they act in the body. What happens is, yes, it makes us more tired, but it also makes us more hungry. You've heard of people smoking and they get the munchies. Okay, I'm not here to dive into that today, but know that there's a reason for it. And I'll talk about that in a second. So not only does it make us more hungry, but if we do act on that and we do eat, we are resetting our tiredness like it's the daytime again. So that's one big aspect of it. The second thing I did say is that it's not well controlled, so we don't always know what's in the product. There are some great brands that people use that have third-party studies done on them, on their product, to say, hey, we're non-biased, let's pay someone to look at our product and see how clean it is and that we are what we say we are. And those are better options too. But know that this will help get us to sleep if it is the case that it's used. It will not allow us, it will actually block receptors for us to get into REM sleep. So what will happen, like alcohol, this is the exact same thing I would say about alcohol later today, is that when we have alcohol or when we have CBD, is that it will block our REM sleep. So until about 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 in the morning, we are not getting the REM sleep, and our body will claw its way back to get it. So then we dream really heavy, really deep right before we wake up. It might wake you up kind of like you have a hangover in the middle of the night and you're dehydrated and awake again. But if that doesn't happen, then closer to the morning, you'll have really exotic dreams because the body will do everything it can to get back to the REM sleep. So I wouldn't say it gives you the quality of sleep that you're looking for. The other one is melatonin, and I get asked about this all the time. Now, the amount of melatonin that we actually need to fall asleep, melatonin is like, there's such a good example. If we're starting at a 100-meter dash, the person that stands there and blows the gun is your melatonin. They get you started. But then melatonin fades as our body goes from sleep to turn into the awake cycle, right? And it does not keep you asleep. It's not the conductor. It's not the one using all the different physiological changes to get us to actually run. Okay? So melatonin will help you fall asleep, and it's produced naturally in the body until, like we were talking about addressing, Sherry, is until we are postmenopausal, or for men about 65-ish, again, it's relative, age where we don't produce as much melatonin. So study-wise, melatonin isn't really necessarily the best supplement because it's not actually going to improve our quality of sleep. It has, in studies, improved our quality of sleep by 3.9%. That's marginal, right? Now, the amount of melatonin we need is 0.1 to 0.3 milligrams. So the reason is that companies, this is $1 billion industry on selling melatonin, okay? Because it's not patented. You can sell it, you can buy it anywhere. Is that, hey, let's just increase the amount of milligrams we have in our melatonin and charge the same price for it if people will buy our product. Because they'll say, hey, I want more melatonin. I'm going to buy the 10 milligram one versus the 1 milligram one. But really, it's not necessary. Crazy, right?
Is there any benefit?
It can, like once you get to a certain age, if you cannot get yourself to feel tired enough to fall asleep, yes, it can benefit you.
Okay, but very small.
But 1 milligram. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
It's not going to help if you have more. I know, it's so unfortunate. Sometimes I'm like, child, please sleep. Where's my melatonin? But she's producing it naturally, and there's other habits we can change. Now, a lot of things advertised as natural sleep aids. Just know that if they were natural and if they worked as perfect sleep aids, they would already be patented and sold in our $1 billion pharmaceutical industry. So be aware, be wary, okay? There are a few natural supplements that you can do to help sleep. I'm just showing you the ones that we have, but I want to tell you what's in them, which makes sense. Tart cherry is a huge, literally cherry, right? Not the juice, but actual tart cherries have major benefits to sleeping better. You can get them through your food. Most people don't. It's kind of hard to find the right cherry. So in our max greens, most of us don't get enough fruits and vegetables, which really upsets our sleep cycle and upsets our hunger cycle. And we try to eat snacks as we go, or try to like, oh, I can't fall asleep because I'm hungry right now. But we reach for the carbs. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about the delicious carbs, not the healthy carbs, right? The more tired we are, the more likely our brain will crave the things that are worst for us, the comfort food. But often that happens because we're not getting enough of our fruits and vegetables. And this has a high portion of tart cherry in it. So that's why this product is great for helping regulate sleep, regulating hunger, weight loss, and a natural cycle in the body. Magnesium is asked about a lot. But most magnesium sold is magnesium citrate. You heard of that?
Oh, yeah, I have.
It's essentially a laxative, okay? Because it works with your smooth muscle. Magnesium by itself needs to bind to other things to process in the body. So magnesium glycinate, or magnesium, there's lots of different names for it, but glycinate is in the word, and I can list them for you if you'd like. The biggest thing about magnesium and why it's linked so much to sleep is that for a long time, people that were magnesium deficient and started taking magnesium slept better, because we do need magnesium. But it's not that many people that are really completely deficient of it, but it still shows that, hey, if you get enough magnesium, you will sleep better. So if we are turning to a supplement or a sleep aid, magnesium is a really easy place to start. You can also look up magnesium-rich foods, and you'll find that too. And the Sleep and Mood formula is a very affordable supplement because it has something called P5P in it. And I know it, but I want to say it right. It's perioxidal 5-phosphate. And this is the active ingredient in vitamin B6. And B6 naturally helps us feel awake and feel tired. Feel awake and feel tired, and it helps regulate that. So that's why it's titled the Sleep and Mood formula. Because what happens with your moods when you sleep?
No better.
They're more regular, they're more rational, essentially. I like more better though.
No better.
Okay. So this is, if there's something you're like, I've tried everything and I know I'm not getting enough greens and I'm probably magnesium deficient because I don't always eat the way that I should, or my moods are all over the place, this would be a really good package. In the back of your packet, you'll see what that looks like. All right, guys, I'm gonna speed it up. Can you keep up with me? The next one here is that I'm going to go through a couple of these in a row. First of all, I can only sleep on my couch, or I can't sleep in the bedroom. I'm also going to talk about the person that you sleep with, if that is the case, and not sleeping without our phone. First and foremost, oftentimes, like the psychosomatic thing I said that we develop in our room happens from our habits at night. So if we wake up in the middle of the night, we play on our phone, or we sleep with a TV, or we talk, or we listen to music, or whatever it may be that activates our brain into thinking, here's my list for the next 6 months of what I need to do and how much stuff I didn't get done yesterday. Anytime we work ourselves up and we do it in the bedroom, we're changing our relationship with the bedroom. So my really big point here is, if you are not sleeping for more than 30 minutes, get out of bed. Get out of your room. Your room is your safe space. Go somewhere else. It's okay if you go to the couch. It's okay if you go do a puzzle. Whatever you do, try to avoid the blue light when you do it. Blue light, you know what I mean? Screen time. TV, phone, whatever it may be. Because that will, again, trigger that you're awake. And try not to have any of the, we talked about keeping all the lights off and everything. It's exactly that. Keep the house dim, because sunlight, and which we need, and we need daylight, will trick our brain into stop producing melatonin and wake us up. It'll produce the serotonin, it'll produce that awake readiness, adrenaline hormones. Okay, so our hormone switch happens. So the biggest thing is, it's okay to go to the couch, it's okay to do something. Some people like listening to something, because the more detail that you hear and the more detail you think about that's not related to the crazy thoughts that we have going, I'm just the only one with crazy thoughts maybe, the more detail there, it will exhaust us to get back to sleep. Some people like to read. Reading is obviously a generic, wonderful form to do it. Of course you have a light, it's just not you're turning all the room lights on to do it, okay? All these things are really important, but as soon as you get sleepy enough, try not to sleep on the couch and go back to bed. Okay? Make sense? Questions about that? And the next thing is, so I'm not going to talk much more about sunlight unless you feel like you're not getting any sunlight at all. Then vitamin D is a really important conversation in that part of it. But in terms of our relationship with the people in our house, animals included, a lot of people sleep with their animals, is that we all have different, did you know this? We have different circadian rhythms. Do you know what circadian rhythm is? It's the rhythm at which our body sets when we're born, and it's programmed into us. And you can't actually really change it. You can adapt and modify per lifestyle, but very much you're born with our circadian rhythm. And it's pretty much broken into 3 parts. Either you're a night owl, you're a morning person, or you're in between. And what I mean by in between is literally in between. You don't go to bed too late, you don't wake up too early, you're right in between, and that's where your body is. And that's where 40% of us are, the 30% of the other 2. And so if you have a partner or someone else sleeping with you, or an animal that it is, they have them too, is that your rhythms might be different and you actually might be upsetting each other's sleep because of it. So this is just an idea. It's not something I do at home because we feel a lot of security with our partners too, and that's an aspect of the comfort. But if that's not you, then it's okay to think on the idea or try it for a week to maybe sleep in different bedrooms, or really respect the other person's circadian rhythm of time, so that you actually have more improvement in your quality of relationship if you're both getting better sleep. All the phenomena that are associated with not sharing the sleep time are not actually true because of so much that happens to us when we do sleep. So again, choose what you want, but just know that we're not all programmed the same. This is that tribal mentality again, like essentially if each different people had different sleep times, there's only about 2 hours in the entire 24-hour period. You know what I'm talking about when I say tribal mentality? There's about 2 hours in that whole period where everybody's sleeping. But otherwise, it is believed to be an evolutionary process that there's some reason that we are programmed exactly this way. So try to get to know yourself. If you're a night owl and you're trying to go to bed at 8 o'clock, it will be a whole misery experience. Or if you're trying to work a job that you have to get up at 5 a.m. every single day. Now, variability is fine, but this is a consistent change every day. Try to get to know yourself and where you're at. You will know by feeling the most rested when you did the right one. Okay? And I said I was also going to talk about sleeping without the phone. So I'm going to go through these really fast because I could talk all night about way too. I even told Maggie, like, there's 30 subjects we haven't talked about, but I'm trying to keep it. We talk about repetition and routine. And besides when we already talked about alcohol and caffeine. One thing I didn't say about alcohol, I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack for a second.
We didn't talk about the meal.
We didn't talk about caffeine yet, no.
Or alcohol.
Alcohol I just mentioned, that was very,
Oh, just
very
the-
similar
oh,
to
okay.
CBD. I didn't
Oh,
actually
okay.
say that much more about it.
Gotcha, okay.
I am definitely a person that has alcoholic drinks from time to time. Things have changed right now. But in general, and there is no real benefit to having alcohol and sleeping well because it pushes the REM sleep so much. The body's working so hard to detoxify, and it messes with our circadian rhythm and a whole other list, a host of health things that don't really benefit. You could argue, yes, there's a ton of antioxidants in wine if you want to. That's okay, there is some truth to that. But just know you're not gonna have a great quality of sleep. And the problem is if we have a really bad night of sleep because of a substance that we're consuming, and I'm saying any substance that affects our sleep, we don't actually get to catch up on sleep like we believe we do. You can catch up an hour the next night, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, but the sleep we lost is the sleep we lost to some degree. So just live your life, but limit. You know, not every night is a binge-worthy night. Again, I'm not telling you what you can and can't do, but just know if sleeping's a major problem, that alcohol is soothing and it does get us to sleep, but it does not keep us asleep and doesn't give us the quality that we need. That being said, our habits, so alcohol is one thing to change. Avoiding the nighttime snacks that are very carb heavy. Do I need to spell out what those are? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay. It's not that I need to, but if you have questions on that, let me know. Snacking on those, you want to find rich foods instead. Rich would be like nuts and seeds and avocados and even cheese, and water is perfectly acceptable. Tea, but it has to be decaffeinated. And I'll talk about decaffeinated too. In the sense that something's going to get our body back on track. So those two things first. Avoiding the snacks, really avoiding the alcohol as much as possible. I will talk about caffeine, I swear, but also being repetitious, trying to go to sleep in the same hour window every night and trying to wake up in the same hour window every day. Again, work does not always allow. This is your off days and what it looks like in your off days. Nurses struggle a lot with this because their schedule always changes. Other people do too. But essentially as close to regulate as you can get, like on the weekends, even though we need to catch up on our sleep sometimes, going to bed earlier is going to have more benefits than trying to sleep in. Okay? But nighttime practices, if you have a routine, something I learned with a toddler, and so many books I read about sleep as I fell asleep on them, is that sometimes we make really long bedtime routines. It's okay to shorten, but having a routine. It's okay if your routine is 3 minutes or it's an hour, but the shorter it is, the better it is. Some things that we can really focusing on is some people just don't allow their phone in the bedroom at all. That might not be you. And that's one of my things is like, I'm not putting my phone away. It's my alarm clock. I just can't help it. But what I will tell you is that if you lay in bed and you're like, I'll finally text people back. I haven't looked at my phone all day. I'm finally going to respond to them. I'm going to send that one quick email, or I'm going to tell my mom I'll call her tomorrow, or whatever it may be. You are reawakening your body, okay? Because you're doing something productive that's not worthy of sleep. So putting your phone down in the other room. The other rule that I've heard that people do that actually works great, I've been trying it, is you can only have your phone, you can only be on your phone in your room if you're standing. Because you're going to get so sick of standing that you will finally put it down. Even if you sit on your bed, you're not in your bed when you're on your phone. You need to protect that relationship with the bed, but also you need to protect the time that you're on your phone too. Having a TV in your room is directly linked to an obesity uprise because it interrupts our sleep that we can't get into deep sleeps. So if you're a person that has to fall asleep with noise, I get that those are some people. Try a sound machine, and if it's still not cutting it for you, you're like, nope, I'm gonna listen to Friends on repeat because I know I can fall asleep no matter what. Or your spouse doesn't allow that, whatever it may be, then put the sleep timer on your TV. It's okay if it's 30 minutes, it's okay if it's an hour, but do not let it be 3-4 hours of that TV running before Netflix asks you if you're continuing to watch. The CEO of Netflix once actually advertised and said that they're having a war on sleep. Like, how much money does that make them? I'm sure a ton. But who doesn't hit, I don't know, maybe this is just me, who doesn't hit like next episode, right? So just know that that's major detriment to you. And putting your phone down or setting those parameters. And then these are some really easy tips that you can do. And I did create a tip sheet for you. So it's kind of on that, or Maggie did, to be honest. Dimming the lights an hour before you think that you're actually going to bed will really help our melatonin produce more significantly. Turning off distractions. And with our child, we start whispering. Everything's a whisper. And she kind of slows down with it. So whatever works on a toddler really works on us too, but it's so much more fascinating watching it on a little one. But slow down. It is not a rush to get everything you can. I did not mean to make eye contact, Barb, I swear. The rush is not to get everything done before bed. It's okay to make the task list of what you need to get done, but then make sure you don't look at it again. Put it out of your mind. Expurge from your brain. I don't think that's a word. We talked about reading this and then making a routine. And actually, if you set your bed in the morning, every morning, you're 19% increase in your sleep production that night. So make a habit of making your bed every day.
Really? That's not interesting.
It is really odd. My husband's military, so he does it, but I just don't let him do it because it's one of the few things I really, really love that he does. And this we already talked about. The next thing is, I'm going to make this really brief, but there are a lot of people as celebrities that probably because they're famous, but also because they are so productive, have been known for not sleeping very many hours or having a really funky sleep schedule. So Leonardo da Vinci, Margaret Thatcher, these are some names that I hear a lot of. It is not a surprise that the two of them both developed dementia and eventually brain issues. So there's a direct link between dementia, Alzheimer's, and lack of sleep. It is so direct that they have developed a whole new research branch on it, and that, of course, there are other causes, but they don't know many of the causes. That it's such a significant correlation that they can't even quantify how related they are to one another. So if that's, I hear that as a fear for a lot of people, like I would lose anything but my mind. Just know that it's very heavily linked to lack of sleep. And so sure, for a period of time in your life, you may only need a certain many hours, but again, it's non-negotiable. It's a product of life. So we're taught to believe we will be so much more productive if we have less sleep. And for a short period of time, like cramming for a night, yeah, maybe. But the actual difference in studies of showing in children of how they perform on an exam, the difference between acing an exam and failing an exam is 2 hours of sleep. Of course, there are other factors. It's heavily proved to be a link. Okay, I think we talked about this, right? Life doesn't allow. You just make it allow as when you can. You take turns, you schedule your shifts, you do what you can at the time of your life that allows for you to sleep when you need to sleep. And this is where we talk about napping. The most productive nap, because I get asked this a lot, and now I'm being more brief because I've been talking your ear off for a long time and you're probably overloaded with information, is the most productive nap is 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes of sleep time. The problem is when we sleep over 20 minutes, which for most people is usually about an hour to an hour and a half, when we wake up, when that alarm goes off, typically it's waking us out of REM sleep. And for the next hour, our brain still actually hasn't woken up. You actually feel awful and so much worse, so much less productive, and all the things associated with not sleeping well happen. We make worse decisions, we have more emotions, more anxiety, more depression, our moods are all over the place if we nap too long. So either nap for 20 minutes. Meditation has so many benefits. That can look like prayer, that can look like quiet time, it can look like yoga, whatever it may be. 20 minutes is key. Okay? If you nap after 3 p.m., you will not develop enough, it's called adenosine, enough of that buildup for your body to say, okay, I can produce melatonin and now I'm tired. So you still will be tired, but you won't feel tired. I would not recommend napping to someone that cannot sleep well at night at all. You can meditate, you can do things that are relaxing and calming and read a book and do whatever it is, but you cannot be a napper. Okay? Questions about that?
What if you don't set an alarm and you just sleep until you wake up?
There are some benefits to that too.
3 hours.
If you feel like
3.5 hours.
if you feel like you're getting that, if you wake up rested
Mhm.
and it's not affecting your sleep at night,
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it a problem because your body's playing catch up.
Mhm.
So there's a really, the reason this has been so well studied is because twice a year we have daylight savings.
Mhm.
So the hour in the spring when we fall back, right, we
Spring
lose an
forward.
hour.
Spring forward, fall back.
When we spring forward, so we lose an hour,
Mhm.
gets me every time. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we spring forward and we lose an hour of sleep, that next day after daylight savings, there's a 28% increase in heart attacks. This is also linked to car accidents, crashes, suicide rates, and anything that involves a trauma. On the, what is the fall back? It's the exact opposite. 21% decrease in heart attacks, 24% decrease in suicides, and the list goes on. That hour is crucial. So if your nap is not affecting that, I'm not saying it will turn into that, but just know that your body will force sleep on you if you're not getting enough of it. So your body might be telling you, hey, I need a nap, but you need to get the 7 hours at night to make up for it.
Mhm.
Okay? All right, let's talk about caffeine. Oh, sorry, I do get asked about this a lot. So last thing, sleep positions. What's the best sleep position? Does anyone want to talk about this at all?
Sure.
Essentially, the foam rolls, if you've ever been given here, create a nice space of support for the spine. So when the spine is most relaxed, your autonomic nervous system will work the best. Now, if you have injuries or like knee problems or certain things, it's okay to use your pillows, but the goal is not to use more than one pillow behind your head. So the ideal position is on the soldier, is on your back. It's okay if your arms are up in certain different positions here. This person's laying on their stomach, so we'll talk about that in a second. It's okay if your arms are up, your body's in, your limbs are in different positions, but back is best. This is not the case for infants, which we could talk about a different day, but it is for us adults who can move around freely. And the side is also okay if we're not sleeping like this. We still want to open up the body and have a pillow to support us if we're laying on our side, as long as we're not crunched in that fetal position. So it's okay if you have a pillow between your legs, a pillow under your legs. It's okay what you do with your pillows as long as it's not affecting your neck, which is why stomach sleeping is so harmful to us, is because we're forced to be in a position for a long time.
I thought that was just pretty much how we were naturally. Some people, I can't sleep on my back. Some people can, but
Some people can't because of pain, but the idea would be the most
my body
comfortable
doesn't
position.
stay there. Even if I fell asleep there, I would turn over and
Yeah,
sleep.
no matter what, it's okay to turn over, but I always call it the pillow barricade.
Okay.
So if you're a stomach sleeper, the goal is not to be a stomach sleeper.
Oh, I don't do
So you build up all the pillows right next to you.
that. Okay.
So you start in one position, and when you roll, you can't roll all the way over,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You could call it a husband, you could call it a pillow, but I usually do the pillow. So essentially, like even people that sleep with their animals, like still give yourself some
Okay.
space so that you can move around in your sleep.
Okay.
But whatever you do, avoid sleeping on the stomach. Because even though it's great for the oxygenation, how much oxygen we get through our body, it's not great for the positioning of the body when the nervous system needs to work the hardest.
So as long as your neck is well supported on your sides.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And a lot of people that have a lot of back aches, that's why we have those foam rolls here that we give you to give that curve support that's supposed to be there. I got a nice big one right now, right? And give that support, and you will get a more sound sleep if your spine is supported. Okay, if your body's not working so hard. Okay, that's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about caffeine. All right, this is the last major point of today, except for questions, of course. And And the only thing I was gonna say about adjustments, I just have to say it because it's so important, and of course it's what we talk about here, is one adjustment increases your immunity response by 40%. Also tremendously helps your sleep cycles. So you're just as much 40% more likely to have a better night of sleep as you are 40% more likely for immunity. So we can't all aid that to the adjustment. We can aid the process of actually sleeping properly for that night to come to how the body's responding when your nervous system doesn't have that interference, because that's when it works the hardest. During the day it processes and allows for us to move, and at night it self-cleanses and replenishes. And that's for any cell in the body. That's my only point on chiropractic today. Caffeine. This is what I get asked about the most. Any questions about it first? Like, when can I do it? Any of that, or should I just tell you?
Just tell us.
I stopped drinking caffeine, but I drink decaf coffee. It still has caffeine in it. But is
It
that
does.
okay?
Yeah. A huge myth is that if we're drinking decaf, is that it's decaffeinated, right?
Right.
But because it comes from a caffeinated bean, and I'm talking about coffee in this sense, but in tea it's sort of similar, is that because it comes from a caffeinated bean and it goes through a huge detoxification process, decaffeinated is not the worst thing ever, but know that you are still getting some caffeine.
Okay.
So even if it's decaffeinated, I don't always recommend to have it later in the day, because even though it's a small degree, it still will affect you.
Okay.
So caffeine itself has a half-life and a quarter life. Have you ever heard of that? It's the same thing we talk about in medications. Okay, so I'll be brief on this, but what I mean is that when you drink it, it will let's say I wake up in the morning, I drink a full cup of coffee. This is about 200 to 250 milligrams of caffeine, okay, with black coffee. So the caffeine that I'm consuming by, let's say I drink it at 6 a.m., it's about 6 hours. So by noon, it's already at its half-life, which means half the exposure that I would have if I drank it right away in the morning. Is that making sense? Then it takes another 6 hours for the quarter life to wear off. So caffeine really is in our system for about 12 hours, 10 to 14, give or take, but let's average on 12. So if my last cup of coffee is at noon, then I will wear off the effects of caffeine at midnight. What it would be like is if I didn't drink any coffee all day long, and at 8 p.m. I would take a fourth cup of coffee and go to bed. That's how long it stays in our system. Now there are benefits to coffee, not all caffeine, but coffee, because there are so many antioxidants in coffee itself that we don't always get from our food. This would be like berries, avocados. There actually are a ton of health benefits to it. Even decaf, but you want fair trade or organic because the process that the beans go through. A lot of coffee beans, because they're so mass produced, have a lot of mold in them. So people that are really sensitive to mold or asthma or allergies don't actually respond well to coffee. They might think that they do, and we actually process caffeine at a different rate. Like I said, there's a range, right? 10 to 14 hours. Some people process caffeine a lot slower. So they're like, I can't drink caffeine, I'll be up all night. Someone could be like, oh, I could drink 4 cups of coffee and go to bed. The reason they can go to bed is their body processes caffeine differently, but they are going into sedation, not into proper sleep. So yes, you could drink coffee and you could be the person that goes right to sleep, but the benefits do not outweigh actually drinking that. I see it a lot with people having to finish an assignment. They're like, I gotta work till 1 a.m., 8 p.m. I'm gonna take a shot of espresso. I know I'm gonna be so tired from my work, I'm still gonna go to bed at 1, and they probably will. But they will have such a crappy night of sleep, it'll be like they might as well pull an all-nighter. Okay, so the thing is, I'm a coffee drinker, or I was before I got so nauseous, but a coffee drinker. I'm not gonna say you can't drink coffee, but be sparing and know that half-life calculation in your mind. Like, your last cup of coffee really ideally should be 10 or 11 a.m. Okay? If you're drinking it later in the day, you're probably not getting enough sleep as it is, and we want to have the least amount of interference we can with that. Now, most of the other things that we have caffeine with, energy drinks, you name it, there's so many others, I'm just not going to list them all. is there's so much other crap in there that there aren't that many benefits. The reason why Red Bull is so famous is because it's mostly B vitamins. So yes, there's a lot of things in it that are bad for you, but caffeine is one of the things that it has a lot of, equivalent to a cup and a half or 2 cups of coffee. But the B vitamins make us feel very awake. You know, like we talked about B6 or the active form of B6, the P5P. Yeah, that helps us regulate and we feel good and we're ready to go and you can punch a hole in the wall. But the 5 Hour Energy, massive B vitamins, because we need the B vitamins, but it keeps our brain from triggering that we're tired, and that tiredness will not go away. So suddenly it'll hit you in the face when the caffeine wears off, and you'll have those withdrawals. Did I answer everybody's questions about caffeine? Okay. Any other questions from what you learned today? Dreaming, sleeping, what are my habits? Where should I go from here? Your list of things that might be all the way down on my list here. I'm almost there. This list that we have for you of a summary of things that will make your sleep better. I call it trial and error, for real. You're gonna find what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And it might not feel like we've pinpointed exactly what's going to change in your sleep, but the more you know, the more likely you are to respect the sleep process and do something better than you did last night. Questions? Thoughts?
I've been taking that sleep and mood supplement and it is awesome.
Thank you for sharing.
I am sleeping. I've just really been struggling with sleeping through the night, waking up at like 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. and about 80% of the time I will sleep all the way through the night.
Wow.
On that.
Is it okay if I ask you in the group, how long have you been taking it and when did you start to notice that?
Only a couple of weeks and I noticed it right away.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
That's really cool.
I'm hooked.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And like there's a reason your body's asking for it.
Yeah.
And I really emphasize like in terms of supplementation that it should not be a forever thing. And in the meantime you can make steps like, of course I want you to have a supplement that works great for you, but I want you to also plan on getting more antioxidants, watching how long, like there should be 2 to 3 hours of no eating before we go to bed, just paying attention to things like that. And you've been doing so great at a lot of these things, but getting that exercise, creating some habits, and those kinds of things in the meantime, so eventually we're not always reliant on something else to get us back to sleep. Were you gonna say anything? You look like you are. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? I kept you way longer than I planned on. I'm really sorry. I got really fired up about sleep. I really miss it.
7:21.
7:21.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay. So there's one last sheet in your packet. I said I was done. I was never done, I swear. So, a lot of times we're having too many people, or too many winters, or too long of cold weather, or essentially what I'm getting at is too much CO2 in our house. It means we're not getting enough proper oxygen to get us to sleep. There's a couple factors I didn't bring up. Number one, that lowers the amount of CO2 in your house. A really easy one is open your windows. I know it's freezing. Just do it for 5 minutes and make sure there's a current. Turn on a fan, go open both doors, let the circulation come through, because fresh air is the best thing you could ever have. And that brings up our oxygen. Okay? That helps us get, why do you think CPAPs are so popular? Okay? I wish we could say this is the graveyard of sleep CPAPs, but we really have to distill down someone's sleep. It is one of the few solutions that they have, but there's so much you can do for the CO2 in yourself and in your house, and naturally get more oxygen. I'm not a huge plant person because I kill a lot of plants, but these are the 4 that seem to last forever, and they're detoxification, and they add oxygen to your air. So essentially they're air purifiers that are not only not very expensive, but they really don't die very easily, which is why we have them here. Thankfully Maggie takes care of them, but we're not here every day of the week. And they tend to hold up in good weather. So that's an easy way to start. It adds greenery, it adds peacefulness and some serendipity to your house, but also really easy and really doable. Open the windows, add the plants, get more fresh air time yourself, clean out your dust vents, or you can also buy, I looked on Amazon, you have to kind of scroll down the list of Amazon products, but you can actually buy a CO2 monitor for about $21 or $22 and check the CO2 in your house. It should be 400 to 1,000, it's called MMs. Anything higher than that is too high. And that's
400 to
really
1,000?
400 to 1,000
Oh,
of CO2. So that's a big thing to look at too. Like, hey, I am going for a sleep study, or they did recommend a CPAP. I'm not here to be your doctor to tell you not to do that, but know that there's so many natural ways of things that you can do instead of spending the $900 on a fancy air purifier that doesn't actually get that much CO2 out of the air. You can do these things naturally. There's certain things about society that will continue to affect our sleep, and there's so many great things about it, but just know getting back to the natural methods of things is really, really helpful.
oh, I can see that. My biggest problem is my habits. I've developed very bad habits, and I can see
You are not alone.
that.
There's a
that's gonna
reason
be the
why,
hard.
like I said, that we talk about these daily.
Yeah.
And even between my husband and myself, like, we are so desperate for sleep with a toddler and one on the way, but eventually you have to sleep, and so breaking as many habits as you can is only going to benefit you.
Absolutely.
Okay. You guys can stay as long as you want and ask as many questions as you want.